Why is Darfur so important to this? Is this like the originating place?
Yeah, Darfur is a really important place, and why we're mentioning it here is because that's first of all where the war is happening right now. There is a real risk right now, Sheikh, that Darfur is going to split up. The word itself, Janjaweed, means al-jinn alladhi huwa ala al-jawad. So it's like the jinn that's riding the horse.
Hmm.
So the RSF kind of became responsible for doing this, taking care of that. That made them rich because they have now been, the leadership of the RSF has now been introduced to Mohammed bin Ziyad of the UAE, which many people refer to as Shaitan al-Arab. I will absolutely approve that message. This was the first time Khartoum itself goes through a war like this, because now you have two fully, properly armed armies fighting in the capital city.
Wow.
But now they're doing it in social media.
Yes.
They would film themselves holding a thing, raping someone. The army is very terrible at fighting in cities because they have heavy artillery, they have planes. They can't do, you can't kill people in the city has people, right? Like you can't drop bombs, right? Unless you're Israeli, obviously.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, alhamdulillah, we're back for part two on Sudan and the current situation in Sudan with Sheikh Ma'moon. So, in the last segment, we covered the history of Sudan. We covered, the ancient history. We covered how Islam came in. We covered the British colonization of Sudan, the story of the last Sultan Ali Dinar, in Darfur, right? So, mashallah, these were very beautiful stories. And now we'll get into the current situation. So I'll hand it over to Sheikh Ma'moon, inshallah.
نعم طيب الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I guess it's worth for us to recap a little bit of what we talked about here, because I love how you did it, alhamdulillah. But just so you know, Sudan is a very ancient land. It's a land that has been ruled and it has so many people living in it. We talked about people from during the times of the Fara'ina. Sudan is a country with more pyramids than Egypt, so that existed there. There was also Christianity in there that also existed there for a long time, also as kingdoms. Right, and then Islam entering into Sudan during the times of Uthman ibn Affan. So this is not like recent. This is very, very long time ago, right? It was, we say it was during the times of the companions, and that's a point of pride for us as Sudanese people, right? Like we were one of the first ones to actually kind of jump in. And also Sudan, as we said, Islam did not enter Sudan by force. It wasn't a war. There was a war, and Sudan was able to push the Muslims back. They said to them, you cannot conquer us as a land. However, your religion can come in peace, right? And Sudanese people became Muslims through that process, basically, where the Christians allowed them to just come in and to trade and to live. And then Sudanese people became Muslims. And after that, obviously, we talk about a lot of Salatin and a lot of kings and a lot of shuyukh who have ruled their areas, different areas of Sudan, based on the tribal space and based on everything else. But I think where we stopped is where we stopped at the kingdom of the Sultanate of Darfur, for instance. It was a unique space. It was the last one to actually join Sudan as an actual country during the British rule. That's because they annexed it from the Sultan Muhammad Ali Dinar. And after killing him and thousands of his family members. And kind of that's where things we ended here. Now I want to talk a little bit about the politics now, I guess really from the 1900s, where 1916 is when Ali Dinar has passed away, up to 1956, where Sudan gained independence. That was at the time, just like I was saying to you in the last part of what we have, is where I think they call it the Nukhba, the elites of Sudan were created. This was a direct byproduct of colonialism. They selected and chose which tribes get to go to school. They selected and chose which of the family members get to go to school, right? And when we talk about schools, again, I'm not talking about university level education where there's enlightenment, right? This is not what they wanted us at all to learn. This was not a thing. They just wanted us to be able to administer the country. Actually, essentially what they wanted to do is they want to cut the cost. So even that, like you just saw how terrible of a people they are.
Yeah.
The reason why they were educated Sudanese people is because they want to cut the cost of administrating it, because it's easier to pay a local, cheaper to pay a local Sudanese person, right, than to bring somebody from Egypt, for instance, to rule Sudan, or from Turkey and so on. At the same time, it was a way for them to also rule over Sudan, because they chose the leaders of the tribes and their sons, right? And those who were in the middle, those who lived along the Nile, and those had a lot of influence already over people. Like if you're the leader, if you're the sheikh of your tribe, and I choose your son, and I teach him and I educate him, and now he has a guaranteed job when he finishes, right? I tell you, hey man, calm down your tribe. They're yelling too loud. You're gonna do that. You're gonna, okay, guys, calm down. You know what I mean? And this is what you basically is gonna happen. And that's the idea behind it, until they created this nukhba. I haven't read this anywhere, Sheikh, but I have a very strong feeling that this lack of education is the reason why the sidelining of other people continued. They didn't, there was no real education on nationalism, on being an ummah, right? Being like the heart of the ummah as a Muslim versus as a Muslim who's African versus a Muslim who's Arab, or a Muslim who is this versus the Muslim who's this. A very important point that I wanted to say here, Sheikh Anas, is really important. The tribes of Arabs and Africans in Sudan are very, very strange. They're not specific to like North and South. Like a lot of people actually understand this, right? Like I'll tell you, for instance, Dongula, for instance, that's not an Arab tribe at all. Danagila, for instance, that's where my wife comes from. I told you about them. This was Rumat al-Hadaq, right? The previous one. They have their own language that they speak until today, right? Al-Mahasan. And those are people who live in northern Sudan, right? However, and also in the east part of Sudan, and they're, by the way, and they're lighter skin, so they're way, you can't tell based on colorism either. So it's a very strange thing, right? When people say to you, this guy's an African, but he's lighter skinned than the Arab. I come from an Arab tribe, for instance, they call it Ja'aliin, for instance. Everybody claims, right? Like we're Arabs with this, but as traditionally, Ja'aliin don't have any other language besides Arabic, and that's how kind of we distinguish between them. So if you have a previous language that you speak at home, that's African, then you're part of the African tribe. If you don't have any other language besides the Arab, then that's kind of how it is. So that's kind of how the divide actually works. For
in general, like right now you have the SAF, the Sudanese Armed Forces, and then you have the RSF, the Rapid.
Yeah, that's right. Rapid Support Forces.
Yeah, the Rapid Support Forces. So, in general, is it true that the Rapid Support Forces are Arab, and the SAF are generally non-Arab? Is that fair to say?
No, I would not say that. I would say that both of them are. So the RSF, the Janjaweed, in terms of tribalistic, again, we talk in general. Doesn't mean that there isn't some who are none, right?
Okay.
Are mostly Arabs. Their leadership is Arabs, right?
Yes.
They come from Qabilat Rizegat. They call the tribes called Rizegat. This is a very very large tribe that comes from. Many of them actually live all across Chad and Sudan, right? And they intermix, and they're like really, really close to each other. While the SAF, the Sudanese Armed Forces, I can't say that it is mostly Arabs. It wouldn't be, because it is an institution that has been established for a long, long time, right? It has been established before. It wasn't established also. It was a national movement. It wasn't established. Yeah, it's the army of the country, basically, exactly. The SAF. Right, so anybody can join, and if you do well, you move up the ranks, and that's kind of how it works. And yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, the leaders, for instance, are from different tribes. Some of them are Arabs, some of them are not, right? And that's not the issue, really. The issue of the war here between the RSF and the SAF is not Arab versus Africans. Mm-hmm. What the SAF is doing in Al-Fashir and Darfur is very ethnic based.
The
Just
SAF,
so you know. The RSF.
Okay.
The Janjaweed. I hate those letters. Let's do Janjaweed and the army. You just call it this way: Janjaweed and the army. So Janjaweed are the RSF, the Rapid Support, and I'll explain this of why they were named that, because I'd rather call them the Janjaweed. That's what they actually are called. That's
And
what the
would there be people from the Janjaweed tribe who lived, in the capital, like in Khartoum, and they were part of the SAF, the army? Would that also, is that a case that exists?
Yeah, you have cases. I wouldn't say that's a general thing. You have cases who have defected, by the way, from the Sudanese army and went and fought alongside the Janjaweed, and you also have the opposite. You also have generals from the RSF, the Janjaweed, who actually also defected and fought alongside the Sudanese army, the National Sudanese Army. Yeah, so that actually makes better sense that way. So this makeup and let's talk now about Darfur and how the Janjaweed came about. I think this is a really important thing. I'll get this out.
Why, you've mentioned a lot about Darfur in the past video. Why is Darfur so important to this? Is this like the originating place of the Janjaweed?
Yeah, Darfur is a really important place, and why we're mentioning it here is because that's, first of all, where the war is happening right now.
Okay.
And Darfur, there is a real risk right now, Sheikh, that Darfur is going to split up. Okay. I'm not optimistic at all. I'm telling you right now, it is going. It may not happen now. It may not happen in the next 10 years. But Darfur is on its way out of Sudan. There's just no way around it. There's just no way around it. What's been done to them has been so bad that you just cannot imagine it. I don't imagine like truth and reconciliation between the two different sides anymore. It's a really sad thing. It's a very, very sad thing. So maybe then I'll explain to you why we talk about this. So in the previous episode, we talked about why Darfur wasn't as developed as Khartoum after it was like devastated by the bombing of the British Empire, like the Fashir, right? And then annexing it, right? It's far away from Sudan. It's almost closer to Chad than it is to Sudan. Any part of that is not close to the capital is not developed. They don't get the rights of anything, really, in a sense. Again, that's not just Darfur. That's all around the country, and it's a habit of all developing countries is that the capital gets a lot of the money and then a little bit trickles right out of the capital into the rest of the country. But then the further you are from the capital, the less you get. In 19 and this was fine, right, for a long time, because Darfur was rich by itself for a long time. These tribes were able to live along amongst each other. They were peaceful. Yes, there was some conflicts between them, but they were smaller. They were able to kind of squash them themselves, right, through their tribal courts and so on, right? And Sudan and the government of Sudan didn't really need to take care of so much of it until the 1980s and 90s, where things just became bad in terms of the economy. Remember, this is like the times when the end of the Cold War, countries were no longer propping up other people's countries, right? Like Sudan was propped up by the Soviet Union for so long, right? So they had its good economy and everything. When things broke up, basically now people's situations became bad. And it became bad all over. But it gets worse where people weren't getting a lot anyways, right? That's kind of it gets really, really bad. And that would have been Darfur, right? Because it's further away from everybody else. And not and to add to that, there was also a major you seem like a really young man, Sheikh. I don't really know how you would have remembered this, but if you remember in 1980s and 1990s, there was this desertification. There was there was droughts. There was also like, and things just were just bad, right? And that shows more where people are getting less resources anywhere. So these tribes started to fight amongst one another even harder. Sure. Really hard, until the peak of I think 2003, I think is when the peak of things happened. You have a couple of tribe leaders who took up arms, and they said, listen, we feel like we're forgotten, and if you're not going to give us our due right, we're going to split up and break off. That was the demand. Like, I remember there was we call it oh my goodness, I'm starting to forget the name of it, but equality and justice. This was a very important haraka, right? That was led by one of the leaders of the place itself, right? And these mostly were African, just so you know, right? There were Africans who were dealing with the drought, because I remember I told you this very early, right? That the Arab tribes, they are nomads, they travel around, right? Yes. The people who are Africans, they stay in one place, they create villages, and they live in cities. When there is droughts and there is desertification and so on, those who struggle are usually the ones who are in one place. The other guys can just pick up and leave, right? That's kind of how it works, right? When they took up arm, the Sudanese army, and this again, this is the really, really sad part about this here. When they took those legitimate concerns to central Sudan, right? Instead of the president at that time, his name was Al-Fashir. He was the one that was just deposed and removed in the revolution of 2019. Instead of being a politician about it, he just went crazy. He went nuts on them. And instead of sending the army, however, to go crazy on them, instead of having to discuss with them. And again, I'll give some commentary on this. You have to understand that Omar al-Bashir, this president himself, he's an actual army general. I always say army generals can't rule because they don't have the tools to rule. The only tool they have is a gun, and that's not how you rule a people. That's just not how you rule a people at all. They'll never listen. If you're a person of the army, you think that every single if your only weapon is a hammer, then every problem becomes a nail. You see what I'm saying to you? So this guy, he's literally trained as an army person, so he fights with them, but he doesn't fight with them with the army. He goes ahead and he arms a couple of tribes that are Arabs.
Oh, I see.
Right? Now, the choice of the Arabs, and just so you know, he chose Arabs, I don't think because they were Arabs. He actually chose them because they were doing well, and they also they were the powerful ones at that time. Like, it just almost by chance that he found Arabs, right? But then I want you to remember something. Him not knowing what's happening in the area itself, or not being able to analyze what's happening in the area itself, is a big problem here. Because had he have recognized that there is already tension between the Arabs and these African tribes, he would not have chosen this. When he did this, these Arab tribes went crazy. He armed them. He gave them everything he can, because remember, at that time, there was wars happening in Sudan anyway. Sudan was kind of in this big, huge mess between North and South Sudan. They were just going about fixing it. The army wasn't doing very well. So he said, instead of me sending an army all of this far, far place, I'm just going to go ahead and give these guys, who are my friends anyways, some money, some arm, and then let them fight it out. That's where the Janjaweed was born. Now, because again, I want to tell you something, because
one specific tribe, right?
No, several, but they are Arabs.
I see. So it's like a constellation of Arab tribes.
Yeah, mind you, I don't know how to explain this concept. When we say tribes, we mean Afghad, right? I don't know if that works, but you mean like Al-Baggara, for instance. This is a big tribe.
That's the point.
Yeah, there is one tribe, and then there's they break off, right? Like, for instance, you have Al-Baggara, for instance. They also have Al-Masali, they have Abala, they have these are the names of them. They just break off like cousins, uncles, and stuff, and and just move away, and it's just, but they still have that that sibra of whatever it is they come from, right? The Arab tribes would basically go into these villages where, mind you, the armed forces, those are the ones who took up arm against the government, would be hiding, and they would burn the village right down to the ground, killing every single thing and putting it all in a big, huge pile and burning it and then leaving. It was a punishment, ya Sheikh, that you could not imagine. It was a true genocide, right? And they were very effective at quashing these movements, right? They were really, really effective because no one would dare. Like, if that's the punishment for just trying to ask for to be included in government, or to send us more money here because we're going through a drought. You know what I mean? Like that's the ask from your main government, and that's the answer from them. Then you wouldn't do it, right? It's a sad situation. It's honestly a failure of the government itself, and that's kind of how it was born. The word itself, Janjaweed, means al-jinn alladhi huwa ala al-jawad. If you think about it this way, so it's like the jinn that's riding the horse, right? So that's what they call it. So when these African tribes would be running, they would yell out in their language, is Janjaweed, Janjaweed, Janjaweed. They came, and that's how the name itself came about. And I would rather name them that, because I think that's the official name that they should go in history under. They were terrible people. They were horrible people, who shouldn't be given a name of the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, or I think that's wrong. I think that's a problem right now, because becoming the RSF was an actual. It was given to them as reward for being so effective at quashing these movements.
Can you tell me about how this new name came about? What's the history? I think this is kind of recent, if I'm wrong, right? So and if I'm not wrong, wasn't there a certain didn't the RSF, quote unquote, didn't they work with the Sudanese army for some goal together recently? If you could that a little bit.
So 2003, just like I'm talking to you right now, this was the actual time when they were able to quash the actual like the movements, right? After 2010, 2011, and I may be wrong, I'm a little washy right now, but as a reward for them being so effective, the Bashir, he included these guys as part of the Sudanese government that is not a part of the army. Essentially, he created a separate army.
I see.
Because of them. And that was the mistake of his life. I think if anything is going to take this man to hell, would have been this mistake here. Genuinely, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us all. But honestly, this is what the mistake that he's made, because he immediately gave him legitimacy. Right. And that's a debate that's happening right now with them. Right. But after he gave him this, and now we're going to get into some politics. I don't really know how much you care about the politics, or I don't know how much you ever want to visit the Middle East again. But I'm going to say some things here that we can clearly say these are my words. They're not a part of the podcast. Okay. They don't represent what the podcast idea is. Right. When Omar al-Bashir gave these guys the legitimacy and he named them the Rapid Support Forces, he also gave them the responsibility to protect the border line on the west side of the country. Now, this is Chad, this is Libya, this is part of Egypt as well, right? Like that kind of a part of it as well. What happens in that space there, Sheikh, if you remember, after the European Union was actually, I mean, there was a lot of documents, right? They're denying it, right? But the European Union, for instance, what they did is they actually paid some money to the government of Sudan to be able to stop the African migration north, because people were just crossing the Mediterranean Sea, going to Italy, going to all these places. Remember that time there was things that were just going crazy. Africans were just trying to flee, and they were just going because there was wars, there was craziness that was happening in that space. So the RSF kind of became responsible for doing this, taking care of that. That made them rich, because now they have a responsibility. They have a real responsibility and getting paid for it.
Can you say it again? What was that responsibility?
to protect the borders of Sudan from the migration, African migration that's coming in from West Africa towards Europe, because that's the way to go. If you want to get to Italy, to get to Libya from anywhere south of Sudan or west of Sudan, you have to come through the Sahara.
I see. So they became this useful tool for the central government. They knew the West, and they didn't have to worry about the West so much. And they had the Sudanese army on this side, and these people, the Janjaweed, they're just anything they need them to do on that side of the fence.
They do it. They do it. Yeah, they do it. Fast forward a couple of years of them doing this. And now they were far away from the capital. Mind you, this was happening. We knew about it, the Sudanese, right? But because they weren't in the capital, we didn't really have an issue with it. And this is honestly a point that bothers my heart so much, Sheikh. I'm not going to lie to you. As a northern Sudanese, or as a Sudanese who comes from, unfortunately, the elitist tribes of Sudan, I didn't pay attention to what was happening in Darfur in 2003, 2005, 2006. I remember I went and saw George Clooney because at that time, if you remember, he was talking against the genocide in Darfur. And I went there and I actually protested. And I said, "You're a liar. You're a tongue for the Western world. My people would never do this." Wallahi, and it hurts me because I did not think that what he was saying was true. Right, 2003. Remember, this is not social media. There's no videos. He just went and he got stories from people in Darfur, and this is what they told him. They told him, "This is what these guys did to us. They came and they burnt the whole thing down. They came and they raped our women. They came and they did this, and they came and they did this." And I didn't believe it because to me, no Sudanese person would do that. No Sudanese person would do such a thing ever. Right. So fast forward now to the Gulf War on Yemen, right? And this is just a couple of years after that. This is 2015, 2017, I'm assuming, right? I'm guessing if the numbers are not accurate. But around that time, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they were looking for mushah, army men, like men who actually walk. You know what I mean? Sudan was the best place for them. Sudan needed the money. It was going through a lot of problems at that time. And guess what? They have a lot of people who are mushah, right? Who are the best of these mushah? The Janjaweed, who for a long time were far away again from the actual capital. They weren't a part of the capital, see? So they gave that coalition all of these guys, right? Which again, it increased from their experience in fighting, number one. Number two, it allowed them to meet and connect with Gulf leaders, right? That's the number two thing. And the number three thing is that they were also able to get paid from this because now there's an actual paid mission. You see what I'm saying? So they were dressing really well. I mean, to the point where, honestly, when I look at the RSF right now, they're dressed better than the Sudanese army. You know what I mean? And Sudanese army is an actual army. It's an army with laws and so on and so forth, right? So, like, there was an institution. There was an actual military police as a part of the army in Sudan, right?
Whereas the Janjaweed or the RSF is more like a militia in a sense.
They are a militia. There's not more like it. They are an actual militia. They don't have.
But you're never dressed so well that it gives the feeling as if they're an army.
Yeah, so they look good and they fight really well, but there's no discipline. I asked a general, actually, a father of a friend of mine. I said to him, like, what's the difference between like the fighting between the Sudanese army and the RSF? And he said they're the same. And he said sometimes the RSF are actually better fighters than the Sudanese army. However, what the military college does for you is discipline. And he says to me, like, it's a really interesting thing for you to understand. He said, that's why atrocities don't happen openly in the army, right? They don't videotape themselves raping people. That's not a thing. That's not what an army does, because you'll be held accountable. You'll go to jail. There is an actual military police that is independent from the army. You have judges who are actually a part of the army who are also independent from the army. The RSF doesn't have any of these things. They haven't gone through discipline. They don't know anything. There are people who are looking for work. They had no work. They gave them uniforms. Here's how you shoot. Here's how you run. Here's how you drive. Now go ahead and burn down that whole village. That's really the training, right? And that's kind of where things became really, really murky, and they started gaining money and power because now they're getting paid from the Emirates, the UAE, they're getting paid from the EU, right? And they have independent authority over the West. And the west of Sudan, which is Darfur area, it is one of the richest spaces in gold in all of the world. You probably have heard this.
Yes, I've heard.
So they started basically now exporting gold under their own name. And the RSF has a really, really strange connection with Chad, because it's closer to them on the other side, right? So if they want to actually so sorry, just so you know, there was the first leader of the RSF before Hemeti right now, or this man whose name is Ali Hilal, right? His daughter is actually married to the president of Chad, Dibby. Right. So you see how strange things now have become. Yeah, they belong to a different country, but his daughter is married to the president of the next country. So the connection between Chad and the RSF is stronger, really, than the connection between the RSF and Sudan, because it's tribalistic. You have to think of this. These guys don't have this understanding of like nationalism. It's not a thing. It's tribalistic. If my tribe says go to hell, we're going to hell with them. You know what I mean? Forget the rules, right? That's kind of how it works.
One thing I wanted to ask you that these are Arab tribes, right? They speak Arabic. And, presumably, they're going to be reading Quran at home. They're, at the very minimum, they have their language. Through their language, they can at least read the Quran. So you would think, like any Muslim, it's very shocking just to see what's coming out and how come, like even the baseline tarbiyah, the baseline kind of education or upbringing of a Muslim, it doesn't allow you to get to this point. So what is it like? What is it about them? Like, and there's not like the element of takfir. Like usually, like sometimes when you see this kind of thing, you see that it's like related with ISIS or certain ideologies that allow you to do takfir, but that element doesn't exist here. So how are they so far away from the Islamic tarbiyah that they can just kill small children, and burn down villages when there are sarih hadith and in the fiqh of the madahib, these things are not allowed. So what is character? What is it about them that that allows them to do this?
There was a Sheikh Muhammad Ahmed. This is a Sudanese scholar, and he was asked about the problem of Darfur before this happened. He said it's lack of deen. They told him like, what's like, come on, there's wars happening and everything. He passed away, rahmatullah alayhi, and he was a man who was not scared. Some people actually say he was killed. Muhammad Said Ahmed is, like I remember this, and he was so weird because I was like, lack of deen. They're like the most religious, most Quran people and all that stuff, right? But it is really understanding of what the fact that religion is supposed to prevent you from doing the wrong thing. It's not just an identity that you carry. It's not like it's not just rituals, ya Sheikh. A lot of Muslims always think that being, and I guess really that comes from the hadith of the Prophet Islam, like shahada, salah, right? And you become Muslim, right? But that's not enough for you to live an actual principled life, right? Like having knowledge over that. As a Muslim, for instance, I know if my boss tells me to go and do something haram, as a religious person, I would say absolutely not. Kill me. I'm willing to die for it, but I can't do anything haram. You see what I'm saying? Especially when it comes to death and killing people. Like who doesn't know that zina is haram, Sheikh? Who doesn't know that?
Yes.
So when you go and you rape people, but then there is this also justification about the sebi, about the fact that these black people are this, and the religion is not appropriate anyway, and that they were forced into Islam because we forced them into it. There is just nastiness that infiltrates the culture, right? And when you're desperate, that comes out, Sheikh. When you're desperate, when you're hungry, Sheikh, and you have no food, and you're going through, like I'm telling you, like the times when Musa Hilal, for instance, started the Janjaweed tribes. It was dire. People couldn't eat in that space. They were, these African tribes were actually asking for real food. Like they say, like, we're hungry. We're not asking you guys for us to become like the president. We don't want to run in a free election. We want to eat. You see what I'm saying? And that's something that was felt right across. but the Arab tribes were given money from the government, right? So I don't think you have. I don't think. And this is sad. Across the world, we've always realized the fact that army people are just not the most intelligent people. They all throughout the world, they always do what they've been like. The setup of army in the modern way, that you have to obey the person above you regardless of whether they are right or wrong. It's what's got us in the First World War, in the Second World, in the genocides that we are talking about, in the Holocaust, all of these crazy things where nobody can just stop them, right? But you find that this didn't happen in Islam. We actually find that there's a very famous story from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Zayd ibn Thabit, for instance, killed a man. قال قتلته بعد أن قال لا إله إلا الله. How dare you kill a man after he said the shahada? قال إنما قالها. He only said it because he was afraid. قال فتحت عن صدره. You see his intention. This is not a thing. You don't kill anyone, right? Yes. Based on assumptions. That's not the way it works. And this is the lesson that the Islamic people, we learn about this. You can challenge the army leader, okay, when he tells you to do something wrong. You can challenge him, because that's not the way life is for us as Muslims, right? If you think about it this way. I feel like we've talked a lot about how the Janjaweed came about right now, okay? And then how they have actually grown and become an actual powerful part. They were separate from the actual army, but they operated in a different space. So the army wasn't bothered by them. As a matter of fact, sometimes they would do things together, right? Like right now, Al-Burhan, the president of the country, the one who's actually running the SAF, the Sudanese armed forces, actually did an operation. I actually have the paperwork to prove this. I know a lot of people don't like it when I say Sudanese people don't like it when I say this, but I have paperwork to prove the fact that he actually also operated alongside the Janjaweed in Darfur. He actually went and saw what they were doing. Right. So actually, if the Janjaweed right now was to go to actually International Court of Justice, Burhan will go with them. He's just as criminally responsible as Hemeti in those 2004 and 2003 events that have happened. Right. I guess let's fast forward to now past the Yemen war. Right. Now they have become very organized, very strong, a lot of money, a lot of power, and just so you know, they have now been, the leadership of the RSF has now been introduced to Mohammed bin Ziyad of the UAE, which many people refer to as Shaitan al-Arab. I will absolutely approve that message. With his connection, basically, he's been able to kind of promise them that he's going to give them some sort of support, because you want to remember something. Sudan, up to that time, was ruled by a Muslim Brotherhood organization, right? Like the Al-Fashir and so on. They actually belonged to the Muslim Brotherhood. It was an Islamist. I hate the word Islamist because it has a negative connotation, but they were Islamists, right? Their vision and their ideology, in principle, not in practice at all. I'm going to be honest with you. In principle, they're Islamists. In practicality, they were not. And I will debate anybody over this. I have all of their actions written up and ready for any debate. I'm going to make this actually a space. Anybody who wants to debate me over this, please connect with me. You can take my phone number from the Sheikh. But and the UAE's ideology, by the way, is very anti-Islamists. We have examples of this as well. In Gaza, they hate Hamas. They would rather go with Israel than Hamas, right? In Libya, they stood with Haftar against the actual Islamist group, right? In Yemen, for instance, they supported the secular versus the Islamists. Like this is their ideology. I don't think actually they care for anything else except for the fact that they don't like Islamist movements in their realm, in their space. Okay, and even in the U.S., I don't know if you know or not, but they actually pay a huge PR firm to actually outlaw the Muslim Brotherhood and to label them as this has been proven that the UAE is actually the one that's paying for these. Like they're more Islamophobic than Islamophobes. If it makes any sense, right? In 2019, Sheikh, And I think this is kind of where things are going to get really interesting and kind of crazy to what's happening right now. In 2019, the revolution happened in Sudan, where the Sudanese people said, enough is enough. We don't want this Al-Bashir guy. Get him out of here.
Mhm.
Okay. The army of Al-Bashir, who was in Khartoum city.
Sorry, up until this point, the RSF was still kind of associated with.
Operating under the supervision of the National Security Service of Sudan.
Okay.
Under supervision. Those are the words that they actually use. Under supervision. So they're autonomous, but they get their funding and they get their okays and no's and so on under the
Sure.
And the army was separate from this. And this is a big problem as well, right? Because the army didn't have connections with them. They would just do operations together and so on and so forth. And I think that was okay at that time because even the army had an understanding these guys are just like, they're border guys. They're border guys and they're the special mission guys. When we want to send army to outside the country, we'll send these guys. We don't care for them. They're not, we didn't spend money on training them anyways, let them die outside. Like they didn't care for them. Right. Yeah. And also they were a huge income grabber for the rest of the country. Like I know Sudan got paid crazy money for being a part of that coalition with Saudi Arabia and the UAE against Yemen. Right. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us. Honestly, we've devastated that country for no reason, for no reason, just as followers, right? Yemen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the people of Yemen. The Prophet said, Al-Iman Yamani. Like Iman is Yemen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all my Yemen brothers and sisters, right? 2019, let's go back to this. The revolution came about. I don't want to go through the details of it. The army couldn't really support the Sudan's Al-Bashir. They couldn't disperse the people. And and again, this is the idea here, Sheikh, that I kept talking to you about. The army would give orders to the officers to disperse the people and to shoot at them, and they would refuse. They say, we're not shooting at people. We're not shooting at civilians. That's not what the army does. Again, that's why people have trust in the army more than anything else. Even though the army is still a terrible institution, but they have laws and rules, right? So they said, no, we're not doing this. What is this? Do for Al-Bashir? He calls Hemeti, who's now the leader of the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, who are now in Darfur. And the guy picks up and comes from the western part of the country to Khartoum to help the guy who made him. Al-Bashir is the one who made him, right? And when he gets there, however, he sidelines him and he pushes him out of the way, and he creates this allianceship with the army. And they get rid of the President Bashir, the one who called him. He gets rid of him. Oh, wow. And that was the success of the revolution. Like people said, "Oh my God, the Janjaweed are with us. Now they're calling the RSF. They're with us, and the SAF is with us. It's a successful revolution, right?" But then they wouldn't hand over the power. They removed him and they wouldn't hand over. And so these people were very clear on the fact that they wanted Madaniya. We wanted this to be civilian. We don't want to be ruled by army men, period. We don't want this. Yeah. And they were able to replace multiple people that the army would put forth. They say, okay, how about this person for a temporary place? They said, no, he worked with Al-Bashir. We want to. How about this temporary person? They said, no, until they came to an agreement of having a council, what they call a council, to rule the country for a certain amount of time, until basically there's a civilian organization, a civilian government to be able to rule the country. They failed, Sheikh. They failed. They couldn't come up with a government. Sudan is a very fragmented country when it comes to politics, because politics, again, it runs alongside Sufi orders. It runs along tribal.
I think Sudan is a very Sufi country historically.
Absolutely, yes. In terms of the movements and stuff, it's very Sufism is a really big part of it. Very, very big part of it. Yeah. Now, when they become the council and they fail at basically establishing any sort of civilian rule or whatever, they hire a prime minister. He couldn't do anything else. They remove him. And now the Sudanese people are literally at the door of like the army. Every time something wrong goes, the Sudanese people would just literally go up and shake up the army, and the army would say, okay, fine, we'll get somebody else, right? Until they came up with this agreement of having this council. The council was the Burhan was going to be the president, and the vice president is going to be obviously the second powerful person in the country, Hemeti, at this moment, right?
And the last president, the one they disposed, he's gone.
Yeah, they put him in house arrest, right? He couldn't do anything.
And was the Janjaweed, were they, those tribes or that militia, were they still in Khartoum?
They were in Khartoum, and that's the point of contention that has always been. These guys did not return back to their posts, which is at the Thawur, which is at the borders. You guys are supposed to be at the borders. You fight wars in Sahara and stuff. What are you doing inside the capital city? And that's a major issue that was happening. And then, I'm going to fast forward this because I think it's really important for us to just not worry about this here. There was a lot of attempts that came about. Okay, let's fix this. Okay, let's add this prime minister. No, it's not going to work. Let's add this person to the government. That's not going to work, until they came up to this peace agreement where they said, okay, fine, we're going to create this council that's going to rule for a couple of years. And after these couple of years, we're going to give it over to an election for us to choose a government based on thing. A part of that peace agreement, and it's a very, very small part, talked about the amalgamation of the army, because you can't have two armies in one country. Everybody was in agreement to this. The timeline, however, was the picking issue. Obviously, the army wants the amalgamation of the two forces to be done as soon as possible. So Burhan said 2 years. Now, I don't really know, honestly, if that was legitimately feasible or not. I don't know. I'm not, like, I don't know much about the army or anything like that. Yes. But Hemeti, the ruler of the leader of the RSF, said 10 years. Now everybody was in agreement that 10 years is too long. Like, who wants two armies to be roaming around for 10 years? Mind you, that the president's term in Sudan is 5 years. Like you want us to go through two presidents until you actually amalgamate, have two armies. That's a long time, and it's dangerous, right? And also, he started making some very strange moves because they don't belong to the same institution. He can move his army to places and block roads. He can block bridges. He can even block the actual army itself because they don't communicate with each other, and the army is very disciplined. They don't want to fight. They just kind of hold back, and they were holding back, and they were holding back until the day that the first bullet was done. This was April 15, 2023. Okay. This was the first time Khartoum itself goes through a war like this, because now you have two properly armed armies fighting in the capital city. Wow. And the Janjaweed, and that's really where things became very clear to people like me, who have been sheltered from what's happening in the far west of Sudan, in Darfur, where we actually realized what these guys were doing. And I genuinely, I'm telling you, Sheikh, there's nothing. I remember yelling at George Clooney when he was in Toronto here, and I said, oh man, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me, because this guy was right. Because these guys were doing horrendous things to people in Khartoum, but now they're doing it in social media. Yes. They would film themselves holding a thing, raping someone. Like this is how ignorant and how terrible of a people these guys have been, right? And because they're trained, very well trained at fighting inside the cities, and the army of Sudan doesn't fight in cities. Like no army fights in the cities, right? The army couldn't win. It just couldn't push them out of the city. So they occupied the city, and they were winning for a long, long time. Like Al-Burhan was he was actually under siege in his own, the headquarters for almost 9 months. He couldn't leave.
And this is from 2023.
April 15, 2023. I remember the day the war itself started. It was Ramadan, and I where's your background, Sheikh? Where are you from?
I'm originally from Kashmir.
Kashmiri. For the past, I'm 45, Sheikh, this year, and since I turned 40, I have been deeply, deeply disturbed about my life in the West, and I've been wanting to go back home, right? And I remember this very well because in Ramadan, while I'm waiting for Fajr to come, I would watch like some of my friends, they're in Sudan. They're just like they're doing lives in the mornings and stuff like as the sun is rising and stuff like that. They would just go lives, and the sun would rise their way earlier. I would just come back from like Tarawih and the morning in Sudan already, and so I just I'd watch their lives and stuff like that. I remember I was watching a live of one of my friends. He's a cinematographer in Sudan, and as I'm talking to watching his thing, I hear everybody hears it like a phew. And he's like, oh my God, that's a sniper. That's what he says. He's like, it's a sniper. And then another one, phew, phew. And then everybody starts running in the street. And that was the first bullet that actually started the actual war itself on that day. And it's been like that since then. They were able to again spread in the cities, go in homes, rob the people, right? Janjaweed, again, very good at fighting inside cities. They're very terrible and the government the army is very terrible at fighting in cities because they have heavy artillery, they have planes. They can't you can't kill people in the city. Has people, right? Like you can't drop bombs, right? Unless you're Israeli, obviously, but you can't drop bombs on people in any way, right? So the army just kept on strategically trying to move them, and it was a long process until they were able to clean them up from Khartoum and to remove them and to go and get them out of the east part of Sudan, and now they're basically all the way linked up to in only Darfur. The army
was able to adjust, its tactics and be adaptive, to warfare in the city, and ultimately they were able to get them out.
At a great loss, yeah. At great loss. At almost 500,000 deaths, at almost 14 million displacement, at almost atrocious, like just terrible things that have happened. Like the cost of it was just great. Just really, really, really devastating to the country itself in terms of what was happening, right? However, they were able to push them all the way to Darfur now. Darfur is already their land. Just like I said, they've explained to you, Darfur was already their land. They had autonomy over it. Al-Fashir is the largest city in Darfur.
Was that the capital back when Dinar was the...
It's the historical capital. It has never changed. Yeah, it has never changed. It's the historical capital. And therefore, because it's the capital, it has a small army contingency, what they call a Firqa Sitta Mushah, right? They were there just as part, like you don't have a big army, but you have a small army.
Mm-hmm.
However, when the Janjaweed were being pushed out of the capital towards the west, they couldn't enter Al-Fashir because that army was there, and they were small, but mind you, they're well trained. They're very good at what they do, right? So for 15 months, these guys were surrounding Al-Fashir. Wow. And for 15 months, they were trying to tell the people of Al-Fashir, get the army out of there or you will be punished.
I see.
Right?
That's what the buildup was before.
And that's what the buildup is. So the anger is crazy. Now
why wasn't the army able to send, a backup forces?
You can't. It's very surrounded. Again, Al-Fashir, even though it's a stronghold of the Khartoum, it is still far from Khartoum.
Yes.
And it's still surrounded by a lot of Darfur land.
I see.
Like in order for you to get to it, for instance, you have to go through a city called Bara. That Bara, I'm sure you've heard of it, it was overtaken by the RSF literally a couple of days before Fashir.
So they would have had to open up many cities to be able to.
You can't do it. You cannot do it. You cannot help them. So what they used to do is that they used to basically fly over and throw basically like food and stuff like that over them. But it wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. It was a catastrophe. In terms of hunger. People were eating leather of like dead animals, like they were eating animal feed. The Al-Fashir went through really, really difficult time, very, very difficult time, even before the entry point of the Janjaweed. When the Janjaweed entered it, on the 28th of November, they just istahalluha. Basically, you can go in there and you can kill anyone that you want to kill, anybody you want to hate, anybody you want to rape, anybody you want to slit the throat. And it was just a campaign of anger to show them the fact that, oh, you didn't help us get back our city. Here's what we're going to do for you. When they are basically... Yeah.
These people, they were under siege, and that's why, from the videos that are coming out, you see people who are like extremely
starving. They haven't had food. I mean, it's far away anyways, right? And again, just like I said to you, desertification and like their main issue, Al-Fashir, like the reason why hell was leased on the Arabs there by Musa Hilal and all of these crazy people is that they were hungry. They wanted more. And now imagine even the little bit that they're getting is they're being cut off from them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on those who have passed away. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive those who have passed away honestly and lost their lives. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يربط على قلوب أمهاتهم, the mothers who've lost children and so on. May Allah, this is a very difficult test, ya Sheikh.
And there was a very like iconic image of there was a woman. She was holding her child. I think there were multiple instances like this, and these are videos that they themselves are recording and sharing, right? Like shamelessly.
Yeah.
And they kill them. They hang one woman with her like 2-3 children. There's this woman holding her child, and they just shoot them. They bring up men and they just execute them. With they don't have any defense and they're just executing them up in the field. So this is this is in a way somebody could say this is as or even maybe in some ways more barbaric than what's happening in Gaza, subhanallah.
Absolutely. Oh, without any doubt, Sheikh, the hatred that these and the kind of punishment that they have done. I don't want to belittle from the situation in Gaza, right? Like I'm telling you, right, it's a serious situation. It absolutely, our hearts are with Gaza. And by the way, Gaza is the cause of the ummah, right? There's no doubt about this, right? This is not a cause of Palestinians and so on. It's a cause of the ummah. But yeah, the punishment in terms of sheer numbers, in terms of sheer brutality, I think the Sudanese situation is far worse. It's very much far worse because nothing is worse. Like it's okay if somebody is your enemy and fights with you and beats you and kills you, because there is a real clear dichotomy over what's happening here. Israel wants Gaza, right? And Gaza is just not leaving. You know what I mean? That's just how it is, right? Yeah. As opposed to the opposite. People want to run away and you're running after them and killing them. Like, I don't know how I can describe this. Like a person who's barbaric and he jokingly jokes with people, says to them, okay, guys, pick up your stuff and run away from here. I have videos of this. This is how they play. They toy with people.
Yes.
Okay, they come and they take their IDs. Okay, let's see your ID, let's see your ID, let's see your ID. Okay, you're this, you're this, you're this. Wait, and the question is not what's your name, is what are you? Is like basically in that area means which tribe. Inta shnu? We're like, inta shnu? We're like, ana, kada. And you give the name of your tribe, hoping that name might save you, because sometimes the name of your tribe saves you. By the way, the name of my tribe saved me in Sudan many times from a lot of trouble. Never killing, but like very embarrassing situations. But that's kind of how it works. You know what I'm saying? In how these Massacre people are basically being treated, where they're saying like, let us leave. We want to leave. So, okay, pick up your stuff. And as they're picking up the stuff, they start shooting them, laughing at them.
In the back, right?
Yeah. Or they walk into a house, they say, what do you guys have to eat? What do you guys have to eat? What do you guys have to do this? Then they start eating, and then as they're leaving, they slit the throats of everybody in the house, women, men, children, babies, everything else.
And there was one video of a man, they had taken his arms behind his back and hung him on a tree, by his arms. Yeah. And he was just, screaming, pleading, taking oaths, and lifting his back just so he can get some relief. So this is like,
this is a, Sheikh. This is a. I don't know how to describe. I don't know what's wrong with people. I always say, like, there's got to be, for someone to do anything like this, it's got to be one of two things. Either you're like something, you really hate your opposition, you really hate them to the point where you don't see them as human anymore, or something is wrong with you.
Yes.
There's no third option, right? Like something is wrong with you, or this is a dog to you, or this is and even a dog is a terrible thing.
You dehumanize them in your mind, totally.
Yeah, my daughter was driving and she ran over a little squirrel not too long ago, and the whole drive she's crying and just wailing and doing all that. And that's a normal human thing. Like, you don't kill anything that's alive by a mistake. You're supposed to feel devastation. You're supposed to be hurt, right? But
so I have a couple more questions, 2 more questions before we wrap up, inshallah. So one is like, okay, Sudan has a very like Sufi past. So at what point like you said, the problem is ibtiad an ad-din, right? It's being away from deen, it's ignorance. So I would imagine, right, like whether it's the Arab tribes like the Janjaweed, or if it's the
Mhm.
non-Arab tribes, they both being Muslim, they both must have been following different tariqas, or they both must have had fuqaha and ulama amongst them.
Mhm, mhm.
So what was their interaction like with ilm, with turuq, or with Sufism, and when did that dwindle and come to where it is now? I'm really interested in like the Islamic like side of
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah,
yeah,
I think this is actually a really interesting question, Sheikh, because I haven't, and I'm just gonna be thinking about it as I'm answering it for you right now. I want you to know, Sheikh, that this war has been happening since 2003.
yes,
So many of these people who are actually fighting right now would have been born around then.
okay,
If you think about it, right? So this means that these are people who have been fighting a war all of their lives. These are not people who went to schools and they were going through during the times of raha, during the times of peace. People go to school, they learn, they go to the halaqat, and there is some sort of spiritual calmness, right?
yeah,
But during a war, Sheikh, you can't do that, and this is a real problem, right? That's why, during Islamic history, for instance, the best times of us, religion-wise, in terms of like intelligence and in terms of like our production of scholarships, is when we are at times of peace, right?
mhm.
This is how it works, right?
even
Sudan,
even in
unfortunately,
even in general, even during times of,
yeah,
you still have ulama who are still anchoring you that look, these are, at the end of the day, the larger picture is that we're Muslims, and
that's
so
right.
usually you still have this kind of thing, like this element, this feature there. So
Mhm.
was there not a culture of ilm or of Sufism? Had that finished off?
Yeah. So in Darfur, just like I said to you, during the times of Sultan Ali Dinar, for instance, it was known as Dufatay al-Mushaf, the two sides of the Mushaf, because of how many people you have the Quran memorized. Unfortunately, uh, you know, I don't want to describe myself as like a non-Sufi or a Salafi or anything like that. But like I think from mainstream Islam, the people in the West, I think, are a little further away from that. Like right now, for instance, you look at the Janjaweed, for instance, they wear these things that are called hijabs, which is like verses of the Quran and stuff like that. It's a nonsensical thing. But it does some crazy stuff. I remember seeing a video of a guy who's wearing a hijab. They call it hijab, basically a protection, right? It's a verse of the Quran plus some crazy writing and stuff like that. And they shoot at him and he doesn't die. And I'm like, that's jinn. There's just no way. There's no, to me, I'm like, there's just no way it's anything else. But then also, even though the attraction to Quran is very strong, I think the understanding of actual
Agreed.
mainstream Islam is not there, because again, they haven't lived in a peaceful space, okay, for a long time. That's number one. Number two, they've been neglected. Islamic education has to come from your state, and that's, again, that's what I keep saying to you. The biggest problem that the Muslim Islamist government that we had in Sudan, for instance, it called itself Islamist. It didn't behave very Islamic. It didn't
Yes.
behave very Islamic. Dawah wasn't a big deal for them. Like if you rule the country for 30 years, ya Sheikh, and people hate Islam, and you call yourself an Islamist, it's a failure. At least they should not hate you.
Yes.
But I'm telling you right now, as a Muslim, and I consider myself as a religious person, I hate that government. I think it was a
Yes.
terrible government. I think they've created some crazy injustices, and 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 I'm telling you, أنا خصيمهم يوم القيامة. My life right now, being in the West, I don't like living in the West whatsoever. My life in
Mhm.
the West right now is because these guys wouldn't allow me to live in my own country. They wouldn't allow
Yes.
me to live in my own country.
Yeah, and the reason I brought Sufism up is whether someone agrees with it or not, it's still um
Peaceful,
yeah, it's peaceful, it's
peaceful.
very
Yeah.
to Islam.
Yes.
So it's subhanAllah,
Yeah.
very interesting. So
Yeah.
the final thing I want to leave the viewers off with is the ummah, mashallah, for Palestine, for Gaza. There's a lot of action happening, and people they have voices in their community telling them, you can do this, you can take this action, this is how you can donate, this is how you can impact the situation. Obviously, being here, there's not really much we can do all the time. It's limited, but still, at least we can, whatever little we can do, there are voices who direct us to that. So, Sheikh, tell us, what can what can the Muslims, in the West, what can we do for Sudan, and what should be our action from this?
So the first action, honestly, Sheikh, I always say this: we are in more need of awareness at this point than we are of anything else. This is the number one thing. People need to know about what Sudan is and what's happening in Sudan, and the cause of it, right? Second thing is we need donations. We need donations a lot. I have a link for fundraising that I'm working with on SAPA. This is the South Sudanese American Physicians Association. They have people on the ground. I'm going to give you this link if that's okay with you.
Yes.
Yeah, that is, they're working with them. I'm going to also be traveling with them, inshallah, in a couple of weeks to Sudan. To actually make sure that see what's happening on the ground itself. That's the number two thing. Number three, which is the most important thing, wallahi, we need your du'as. People don't understand how powerful du'a is. I have seen my du'as answered in so many ways when it came to so many different places. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to respond to your requests if you do them sincerely, and to understand the fact that du'a itself is ibadah for you, inshallah, but it's also you, that's you being a part of us. Like, you're a part of our heart. When I'm in your heart and you're saying to him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make it easier on the people of Sudan, this is a very, very important thing for us. So number one, spread this, this views, share this episode of and the previous one. Yeah, absolutely, that's needed. I'm going to take your permission, but yes, anybody who wants to download it, cut it up, post it on whatever it is, honestly, just share it right, left, and center. Second thing is make donations. The rebuilding of Sudan is going to be really, really, really difficult. The war is not stopped yet, but the assumption is at this point here is that the army is going to try to take back Darfur. War leads to more deaths. Doesn't matter how careful you are, civilians are going to die, and that's a really sad thing. So we need to hold our governments accountable as well for this. Living in the West, Sheikh, you sometimes don't understand, but the Sudanese conflict right now is one of the easiest ones to stop, yet it's the most powerful one in terms of damage. And I'll explain this to people. It's easy because Sudan is not a powerful country like Russia or Israel or Ukraine. We actually don't manufacture any arms in Sudan. You just have to stop funding it. That's it. Tomorrow it'll stop. Like if the pipeline, if literally right now someone is saying to me, if the oil stops coming in from Libya, okay, and the money stops coming in from the UAE, right, the war will stop tomorrow.
Where does do the weapons? What's the supply line like? Does it come from Chad, maybe, or?
Yeah, so it comes. So mostly it is. Unfortunately, most of it is Chinese made, coming through the UAE, because China doesn't actually export arms to Sudan. They are not allowed. But what they do is that they actually smuggle them through the UAE, and then the UAE brings it through Chad, and it comes through. To Sudan, right? The oil, the gas, for instance, comes from Libya, which is again because that eastern part of Libya and the army, that's the part that's run by General Haftar. Guess who tells General Haftar what to do? Just guess.
Israel.
The UAE tells them what to do, so he's basically listening to what they actually do. It's a devastation.
I imagine that like you said in the previous episode, Sudan is very resource rich, right? It's resource it has a ton of potential. Not only that, it has direct access to the Red Sea. So it's probably very important to the situation in Gaza right now and in Israel, because the more they can keep Egypt destabilized, Yemen, Sudan, Ethiopia, all these countries, especially the Muslims, and not let them unite upon an Islamic identity, the more safe Israel is. So all of this, in a way, it's
not only that, Sheikh. Sorry, I just want to add to this before you go to the rest of your question. I'm really sorry. Sudan is really important for the Israeli movement as well, because their idea is from the river to the river, right? They call it from the actual Al-Furat, right, the Euphrates, to the Nile. That's really where they want to actually rule. That's where they want their historical land to be. And it's really, really important. You cannot control that land if Sudan is free and doing well, right? Israel has a lot of information, a lot of work that is done on Sudan. If you actually go on Google, like most of the like here's how funny this is. A couple of years ago, this was a very major thing. There was a bombing that happened in northern Sudan as a group of trucks that were traveling going towards Gaza. It was actually given arms to Hamas, and Israel was watching this, and they blew them up. This was a couple of, nobody heard about this, but this was a very big deal in Sudan, right? Where like we didn't know who was this, right? Until Israel said, "Oh, it was us. We were watching these guys." And from the fact that from the moment they crossed, the weapon came through the Red Sea, it came through Eritrea, right, and through to Sudan, basically. And as they're actually traveling along the Red Sea to go north towards Gaza, is when Israel was actually able to actually catch them and hit them. So yeah, it's a very watched, and it's a very important part of the Zionism project. It's not far-fetched that and again, the funder for this is the UAE right now. The biggest supporter out of the whole Muslim world right now for Israel is the UAE. It's not far-fetched that they are connected. I have no doubt that that these two issues are connected.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Ma'moon. Do you have any final words to say?
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, man. I actually really enjoyed this. It's so funny that this is I don't know if you want to start how this came about, but this guy just messaged me out of nowhere, like, "Hey man," I'm like, who's this? Yeah. But I really enjoyed this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. I really appreciate you giving us this platform, man. Keep Sudan in your thoughts and in your prayers. Honestly, Sudanese people, they're just such genuinely nice people that this is not, they don't deserve this kind of punishment, this kind of hardships. The jokes that they actually say, I'll just tell you a little bit short things about Sudan as a country itself. They're so generous that if you actually by a mistake tell some Sudanese person, "Yo, I like your shirt," you're gonna go home with it. He's gonna go home naked. It's a thing. It's a thing. Like that was the warning that was given to me before I actually visited Sudan a long time. The first time they said to me, "Hey, don't tell anybody you like something of theirs because they'll take it off and they'll give it to you." Right? That's a part of your cultural thing. And you've seen the videos. In Ramadan, Sudanese people stop the highway, and They stop the highway and force people to come down and eat iftar with them. Like it's a forcing thing. Like they shut it down. Yeah, this is a document that's been made, but we never thought there was anything wrong with this until I saw the reaction of people on when they watched it on video. I'm like, what? This is nothing. Like I remember this when I was young as well. My dad would literally right before iftar, he would stand outside in the street. And if any car is coming by, clearly he's a person who's not from town, and he would force it to stop. Like he would put rocks and things in front of it. You're coming to have iftar. Yeah, it's a crazy. It's like a revolution, right? Like you come in to have iftar with us, and you're sitting with us, and you're going to do this. So this is the type of Sudan that I want people to talk about. The type of people who are lovely and people who love everybody else and people who love the Prophet. Sudanese people will fight you over the fact of who loves the Prophet more, them or the people of Medina.
Subhanallah. So inshallah, a final message to the viewers, please. We'll post a link that Sheikh Ma'moon sends for a donation in the description. So we request and urge everyone, donate and then also, make du'as like the Sheikh mentioned, and then also spread this message. You can share this video and, with your friends, because there's really not a lot of content on Sudan. So I really appreciate Sheikh Ma'moon coming. Even myself, I wasn't, very aware. So, I'm getting educated at the same time.
Allah Azza wa Jal bless you, man.
Barakallah feekum, inshallah. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sheikh, for your time. And thank you, everyone. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.